everybody, how are you all doing? I hope you're doing well. My name's Matthew and I post videos every Monday and Friday, so if you love the tingles, then please do hit that subscribe button because you are in the right place. Now today's video we are going to be looking at the case of Thomas Jeffries. He was referred to as the monster, accused of a string of horrific crimes including murder, infanticide and cannibalism. His reputation was so repulsive that the gentleman of Brady threatened to break him out of prison so he could have the privilege of hanging the villain himself. But Thomas Jeffries, also known as Jeffrey, as bad as he was claimed to be, Jeffries, or Jeffrey as he would write it, was a native of Bristol, born in 1791. His father was a butcher, and as a young man, Thomas pursued a career in the British Navy. After 3 years, the harsh discipline of the Navy pushed him to abscond, which was not altogether uncommon. He then did a stint in the army before absconding again, but after discovering that he no longer fit in with his old mates back in Bristol, he attempted to give the Navy another shot. This ended up with him robbing the ship. After an elaborate scheme to rob his well-to-do uncle, Jeffries found himself burning through money. To combat this, he joined a gang of highwaymen. After one of their victims was murdered, they were captured but released due to lack of evidence. Jeffries was eventually transported in 1817 for robbery, sailing on the ship Marquis of Huntley. I think that's how you say it. His experience as a sailor allegedly saw the captain order his irons to be struck off so he could work as one of the crew. Some sources suggest that he had a wife and children that were left behind when he was transported, though this is unlikely and doesn't seem to tally with the records of him as a convict. It must also be pointed out that some sources claim Jeffries was a hangman from Scotland, which is certainly not the case. Misinformation about Jeffries goes back to at least the mid-1800s, when James Bonwick cobbled together a very inaccurate depiction of Jeffries among other bushrangers. In the book The Bushrangers of Van Diemen's Land, Jeffries landed at Sydney and was quickly assigned, but his misbehaving saw him handballed back to the authorities. He was allocated to a work party at the Coal River, where he absconded with a party of 4 others. They took to the bush, but after a time their supplies ran out, and 2 of their number were, according to Jeffries, killed and cannibalized by the others. Jeffries was recaptured and sent on a ship to Diamonds Land. He arrived in Georgetown, where he was sent to the prisoners' barracks. Soon he climbed up the food chain and became an overseer. He would later brag that in his time as constable, the incidence of misbehaving steeply decreased, though there is no evidence to back him. It was here that his troubles with alcohol began to become evident. He was stripped of his position after drunkenly attempted to stab the chief constable, who had busted him breaking through the wall of the barracks attempts to put him in irons failed, but he was subdued and locked up in the Georgetown Gaol. Don't know what that is. Gaol. He was to be transported to Macquarie Harbour. Sorry for butchering this. But instead, he was considered to be more useful in the work party at Georgetown. In February 1825, he absconded from his work gang, and was at large for a time, but was soon recaptured and given 50 lashes and sentenced to hard labour. In April that year, Jeffries was transferred to Launceston, where he became the watch housekeeper. In addition, Jeffries was made oh my god, this case has so many blooming words that are confusing me. Jeffrey was made the flagellator. In the convict world, the flagellator, that's how I'm saying it. If it's wrong, I don't give a shit, was the most despised man. This job was usually given to inmates whose cruel streak was considered useful to the governor for keeping others in check by inflicting as much severe pain and injury on others as they could muster. Many convicts viewed the flagellator as a traitor to the convict class, as he had essentially fallen in with the oppressors to break and brutalise their peers. I can see why they would think that. Here, even by his own admission, his alcoholism spiraled out of control, leading to reprimands. He was also fined in August for allegedly falsely imprisoning and assaulting Elizabeth Jessup, although the witness accounts differ greatly and tend to support the idea that Jessup was heavily drunk at the time of the alleged offences and lied about what happened. She was believed over Jeffries. Later writers have tried to construe this event as evidence of Jeffries' sexual deviancy by claiming he raped the woman in his custody, which was not supported by the evidence. Joined by John Berry, William Russell, and James Hopkins, Jeffries escaped from Launceston Watch House. The prison authorities had suspected this and lay in wait as the gang headed out. When they were fired upon by a guard, Jeffries jumped his kit and the gang bolted into the bush. Jeffries was now on the run, and his gang were about to seal their infamy with a string of horrendous crimes ranging from robbery to murder and cannibalism. A description of Jeffries from the 1st of April 1825 describes him as thus: Thomas Jeffries, 210, 5'9½", brown hair, brown eyes, 35 years of age, painter, tried at knots, July 1817, sentenced life, arrived at Sydney Pier, Sydney per Prince Regent, and to this colony per Howis, native place Bristol, castle, hearts and darts, flower pots, and several other marks on left arm. Oh, I'm guessing those are tattoos. Absconded from the public works at Georgetown on the 1st of Feb 1825. £2 reward. Interesting. The out at Springs, taking flour, a musket, and ammunition. They continued towards the South Esk River, robbing huts as they went. They are said to have expressed at this time the desire to join Matthew Brady's gang. Brady would later express that Jeffries had offered his services to him, but refused. Whether or not this occurred at the same time is impossible to say. In mid-December 1825, the gang stayed for 10 days at James Sutherland's farm, Rothbury near Campbelltown. On Christmas Day, there was a shootout, and one of the Sutherland's men was killed. The gang raided a hut, then continued into the bush. On the 31st of December, they raided John Tibbs' farm near Launceston. Several people were bailed up, included Mrs. Tibbs and her infant, as the bushrangers robbed the house. The bushrangers then took their prisoners into the bush, carrying the plunder. The group was split up, with Perry and Russell taking one group, Jeffries with the remainder. Tensions grew as the groups were matched through the bush, resulting in Russell shooting Beachy and Blocky and Perry shooting Tibbs in the neck. Despite being badly wounded, Tibbs managed to escape and raise the alarm in Launceston. Beachy would later die from his wound. The two groups rejoined and continued to head north. During the trek, Jeffries and Russell took Mrs. Tibbs's child from her and went into the bush, where he was killed by one of the bushrangers, who dashed his brains out on a tree. Oh my fucking god. Jeffries told the distraught mother they had sent the child to a man named Bernard after camping for the night. The prisoners were released in the morning. Soon after, a reward of $200 or a free pardon was issued for Jeffries and company. Thomas Jeffries on trial for the murder of Mrs. Tibbs' infant. There's a book about that. The gang's next robbery was committed near Georgetown, followed by several days of walking in the bush with captors. On the 11th of January 1826, the gang encountered Constable Magnus Baggy, who was robbed and ordered to guide them through the bush. When Jeffries became convicted, the constable was trying to steer him into the path of a search party. He executed Bakey by shooting him. They set the captives free and continued into the bush, where they ran out of food and became lost. Perry murdered Russell in his sleep, and he and Jeffries ate their comrades' flesh to sustain themselves. Several days had passed between Bakey's murder, when Jeffries and Perry re-emerged near Launceston at a farm where they found provisions and slaughtered 2 sheep for their meat. Not wanting to waste anything, Jeffries and Perry ate the remaining steaks made from Edward Russell with fried mutton. The bushrangers camped overnight, but they were separated where Perry supposedly became lost while looking for water in the bush while carrying their only cooking pot. Around this time, the gang's departed 4th member Hopkins was captured. On the 22nd of January, search parties went out looking for Perry and Jeffries, while one party was at breakfast at a farm near Evandale. An Aboriginal boy who had been recruited as a tracker pointed out Jeffries approaching. The party overwhelmed Jeffries and he surrendered. The creek where the monster was taken was later renamed Jeffries Creek and ran under what is now known as Logan Road. The creek has long since dried up. The successful posse took Jeffries and back to Launceston, where crowds tried to attack the wagon. He was then lodged in the old Launceston Gaol. Shortly afterwards, Matthew Brady would write to Lieutenant Governor declaring his intention to break into the Gaol and murder Jeffries. Perry remained on the run until the end of the month and was captured near Launceston. When Brady was also captured in March, he and his associates were sent by ship to Hobart to stand trial with Jeffries and Perry. Brady refused to share a cell with Jeffries, threatening to decapitate him if he was not moved to a different cell. Jeffrey was tried and found guilty of murder, then sentenced to hang. He was executed alongside Matthew Brady, having confessed to his life of crimes in a self-penned memoir, but laid the blame for his criminal behaviour on his alcoholism. He was buried in an unmarked grave in Hobart Town. Wow, this is really interesting, and for such an old case as well, there's such level of detail. Like, there's more detail about this case than some modern day cases that are extremely hard to find information on. I'm truly fascinated by this story. Well, it's not a story. It's it's crimes. But yeah, it was a really interesting one. So thank you for this suggestion. If you guys have any other suggestions of cases you'd like me to hear, I am worried about this case that I've kind of butchered most of my words. It's one of those videos, I think, where it looks like I can't read. But it is what it is. There was a lot of confusing words that I've never seen before, which is really helping the case that I can't read. But you know what I mean, there's loads of words that I'm not familiar with, so I've butchered them. It's kind of how it goes. But yeah, he was a deeply messed up man, and to be fair, at a time where they liked to hang people, I'm surprised he wasn't hanged sooner, because I mean, he absconded from the Navy, which, to be fair, I thought back at that time that automatically was like a death sentence. Then he went to the army, absconded from the army, then went back to the Navy and did the same thing. To be honest, I'm thinking they probably should have hung him sooner, but hey ho. Anyway, I hope you found this video to be relaxing. If you did, don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate it. Give it a like, leave me a comment, and I shall see you